Hey there, Pixel Lazy here, and I am just about to embark on a trip around the world. That's right. I am sitting at the Edmonton International Airport in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020. I'm just going to release my parking brakes, crank up my throttle, and we're going to take off. Game just came out earlier this week, and already over the last week I have logged let's say about 12 hours. I have been cruising in a Cessna 172 Skyhawk. I have done sort of a virtual tour of my home province of Alberta, Canada. All of that in preparation. I am going to use this incredible simulation software to set out on a trip around the world. It's going to take me, I assume, months or years.
Lima 100, continue for west departure. I will contact you next when you leave my airspace.
And having
Edmonton Tower, Lazy Lima 100, continue for west departure.
Just listening to my ATC here, having planned this trip for a couple of weeks in anticipation of the arrival of Microsoft Flight Simulator. I spent a few days refamiliarizing myself with Microsoft Flight Sim. I loaded up Microsoft Flight Sim 10 a couple weeks ago, did some practice flights, and then on Tuesday morning, when this brand new Flight Sim 2020 is fresh on my computer, I booted up this local landscape that you see below me. I fly over central Alberta, and I did a bit of a looping tour. My plan was to sort of reacquaint myself with the controls, get refamiliarized with how planes work in virtual simulations like this, and then head off. And today I head off. It's Friday, August 21st, 2020, and I just took off from the Edmonton International Airport, which is about 20 kilometers from where I live in real life. I mean, if we just look over to the window here and sort of see the city.
Lima 100, you are leaving my airspace. Frequency change approved.
City's up there in the top right-hand corner of the
Edmonton
screen.
Tower, Lazy Lima 100, frequency change.
And I live just near that bright
Edmonton
green
approach,
patch.
Lazy Lima 100 is type Cessna Skyhawk, 4 miles west of Edmonton, 4,300 feet. Request clearance to transition Charlie airspace.
Lazy Lima 100, Edmonton approach. Squawk 1404.
Squawk 1404, Lazy Lima 100.
Lazy Lima 100, radar contact 5 miles west of Edmonton, 4,400 feet. Cleared through the Charlie airspace.
Cleared through the Charlie airspace, Lazy Lima 100.
So I really have no intention of talking my way through 2 hours of flights multiple times a week. But I want to make some videos, and I'm going to be logging every one of these flights at my website, pixellazy.ca, pixelazy.ca, and this is the kickoff to what I'm calling my pilot project. I'm just going to head over into the west here, and my first destination is Jasper, Alberta. So I will pick this up in a little while after I've found my bearings, found the highway, maybe got a little closer to the mountains. In the meantime, welcome aboard, and talk to you later. So my goal here, and I'm just kind of flying at the bottom edge of these clouds, trying to lower my elevation a bit. I'm approaching a lake, and I know about this lake because it's a fairly popular lake for people who live in Edmonton to sort of vacation at. It's about an hour's drive west of the city. A lot of people have cabins there, that type of thing. But more importantly, the highway, Highway 16, the Yellowhead Highway, drives right north of that lake. So if I can find that lake, I can find the highway. Now, the computer, the nav computer, gave me a fairly direct route. It wants me to fly essentially east to west on a straight line, and I know I could have tweaked that with some waypoints, and maybe I'll do that a little bit more in the future. But given that I know this area, in fact I know this area so well, because I am in fact, this highway I'm looking for, I'm going to be driving this highway this weekend to go to the same place I'm flying to today in this virtual aircraft. I know this highway well enough that I wanted to actually follow the highway, but I didn't want to really worry about flight plans. And as I'm doing this trip, I'll probably pay a little bit more closely attention to flight plans and waypoints and setting those up in advance, so I sort of know where I'm going and I can hit the points I want to hit. But this first leg, I'm still close enough to home that I wasn't going to worry about it too much. And there you can see Lake Wabamun just off in the distance, right on the few, maybe 10 kilometers ahead of me there. I'm going to get a little lower because I want to skim down over that lake. I'm also, as you'll notice, not really paying attention to recommended flying altitudes and all that other stuff. My goal here is to really go out and see the scenery. It isn't so much just putting in hours and flying smooth, steady flight or following the rules necessarily. I'm not a pilot. I've never been a pilot. 20 years ago I might have had aspirations to be a pilot. I'm not a pilot. Doubt I'll ever be one. This is probably as close as I'll get. So, it's a simulation. I can bend the rules a little bit. And I want to look at the landscape. I want to see what this simulation has to offer. So my goal, as I look across, is to see if I can see that highway. It should just be running. Now, to give you an idea, I'm kind of flying at a more west. So that's north, that's south. And right where my nose is pointing is kind of the top corner of that lake, where I'm thinking the highway runs just a few hundred meters from that lake, little tip of the lake. I have a friend who I think used to have a cabin there. I've visited once. I think she sold it. I don't know. But anyways, I couldn't pick it out on a map, to be honest. So I won't be showing you today. But I will be showing you the highway when I get there. So there we are. See the highway swooping in on that corner of the lake, and I will be following that road all the way out to my first destination on this trip. Now that highway is a multi-lane road that kind of bisects the province right down the middle. Most of the population lives south of that road, but probably 2/3 of the landmass is north of that road. And it cuts right across from Saskatchewan to British Columbia. And in about 24 hours I will be driving down that road to spend some time in the mountains, do some hiking, have a little mini weekend vacation. But in the meantime, I am going to fly there and kick off this little adventure. So from what I can tell, I'm not the only one who's had this idea. I don't want to claim that I am. I made my own set of rules about this, but I've seen on the Steam discussion boards, I've seen on Reddit a little bit, there's Reddit/Flight Sim, people posting that this was their plan. I mean, this was never really a realistic or interesting thing to do in any of the previous flight sims. You could get in one of those handcrafted worlds that was available in, like, say, Flight Simulator 10. I flew around a little bit over the last couple weeks. I haven't played it in about a week since this game came out, but over that week I had it installed where I was kind of leading up to this one being released. I played that game a little bit, and it was good for its time, but it was like being stuck back in sort of the PlayStation 2 era. Everything was really pixelated. I think one of the biggest disappointments, why I sort of gave up on that game and never really had any interest in doing a project like this. Well, for one, lack of time, but the main reason, I flew over my hometown, my home city, and I tried to find anything. There was literally a farmhouse sitting where my office tower should have been. There was just Minecraft style landscape pixelated where I knew there was an entire city. So I could fly over a city like San Francisco or New York and see lots of buildings and lots of interesting textures, but then to go to a city like my own, which I'll be the first to admit is not exactly a bustling metropolis. It's a small northern Alberta, northern Canadian city of about 1 million people. In this game, it looks like the city. In previous editions, it was just sort of made up. I don't even know. I don't know what to call it. It wasn't what I expected it to be. So to head out into the vast unknowns, to just start flying like this and look for something besides auto-generated textures, that would have been just, I can't even imagine doing that for days upon days and investing time in that. Instead, now that this game's come out, my first thought was, well, I should fly some places. So some basic rules. You get in a plane, you fly A to B to C, and so on. Now that I've set out, the next time I take off will be from the airport I landed at last. No going back to previous airports, so I can't sort of make a loop. But that said, if I get to a place where I want to kind of do a more scenic tour of the location, like, for example, I'm going to Jasper. I think I'd like to fly around Jasper. So maybe my first excursion once I'm there will be a scenic tour of Jasper, which would be, swoop through the mountains, have a look at some of the little locations that I will have visited in real life recently, and then fly back to Jasper before heading onward to my next location. If by chance I get to Jasper and I crash this plane, well, I'm not going to have to fly it all over again. My rule is, given a crash, given an unsuccessful landing or a failure, then I will have to take off from that airport and then successfully land at that airport before I can proceed on the journey. And besides that, there's not much for rules, just to strike out and see the world. My goal right now is to kind of make it up as I go along, but in general I want to head out across British Columbia, go up the coast towards Alaska, fly through Alaska, and then over into, I guess, over into Asia and Russia, and then spend some time over there. Go down through Asia, get down to Australia, and then beyond. But we'll see. I'm right now probably about a third of the way through this trip on my first leg, and I will check in again in a little while. I had forgotten just how long this highway was, but
500.
We are cruising along and taking a look at some of the scenery, looking at some of these little small towns that kind of show up randomly on the map. I shouldn't say they're random. These towns really exist. I just can't remember the names of them because they're small little towns that you drive by and the speed limit changes and you blink and then you keep driving. We've kind of left the farmland. We've entered into the start of the foothills and the more forested areas. There's still a little bit of, you can see some pasture land and some farmland kind of tucked in amongst things, but right now this really just seems to be where the forest starts. Past all the lakes, kind of about halfway to Jasper at this point. I'm flying for about, almost an hour. Cruising along, see some of the traffic down there. Oh, there's my car. Going the wrong way. So, you probably noticed I'm not exactly a professional voice actor or YouTubist or whatever they call them. I've been doing photography and video for maybe a dozen years, but I thought this would be a good opportunity to sort of try out some of this, narrating a video game, streaming, not exactly streaming I guess, but whatever you want to call it. So be patient with me. Hopefully I'll improve over time. Hopefully I'll have something more interesting to talk about, but then again, I am just sitting here in my basement and flying towards Jasper in a virtual airplane. This really is remarkable, isn't it though? This, the trees, the traffic. I know this road. Like I said earlier, I know this road. I've driven this road so many times in my life. More times than I can remember since I was a tiny little kid with my parents. I've driven back and forth on this road. And, I don't recognize every little bit of it, but I can sort of get a sense of where I am and get a sense of the realism of it. I know it's based out of Bing Maps, so it's based on actual satellite imagery of the area, so there's some accuracy there, but just to have this rendered, to know that I've flown out of one familiar place towards another familiar place, I think that's why I want to take this trip. I think that's kind of the core of it. That's the whole basis of this, is that why not go see the world when you literally cannot go see the world right now? This pandemic has locked so many people out of simple things like traveling. I know traveling maybe isn't that simple for everybody, but it is and it isn't. We took it for granted, I think. And this game, this simulator, I know I'm not supposed to call it a game according to numerous forums that I've read over the last couple of weeks, but this simulator is almost enough to make up for not being able to travel. I mean, obviously I'd really like to go to some of these places, but to be able to cruise down, this familiar place and eventually to some unfamiliar places to see things I've never seen, and to know that the familiar stuff strikes familiar gives me hope that stuff I've never seen will be close enough to have actually seen it. For whatever that's worth. And right now that's worth quite a bit to me. I think it's worth a lot to a lot of people. So I'm just going to leave it at that. And I'm going to sign off for a bit. And I'll come back when I'm about to land, I think. I don't have much else to say right now, but I'll land this flight and we'll call it leg one of a very, very, very long adventure. I know I said I wasn't going to check in until I was closer to landing, but we're approaching the mountains, and I'm flying over a small town just outside of the national park. This is Hinton. It's basically a logging town just in the foothills of the Rocky Mountains. And it's kind of your last stop as you're heading out towards Jasper. Just up past kind of my wingtip there, there's a park gate, if I remember correctly, maybe 10 kilometers down the road. And once you hit that, you're sort of in Jasper National Park and cruising through the mountains. And I think based on just where I'm planning to go, I'm going to be in the mountains for a few weeks at least. The Rocky Mountains, I have to traverse the Rocky Mountains and fly south a little bit, probably head down towards Vancouver and then back up the coast. And the coast is mountains along the coast, so I might head over to Vancouver Island for a little bit, but ultimately I think my plan is to stick in the mountains for a while, so I'll probably see mountains for at least a few weeks of this adventure. So it's goodbye prairies. Look back, cloud cover. There's this guy, DeadIam84. I don't know who you are, but you've been following me for about half an hour at about the same altitude. He's about 1,000 feet below me, but he's also flying a C-208, which I'm not sure what airplane that is. I'll have to look that up. And that's it. I'm leaving the prairies, right at the edge of Alberta here. and onward. So we're getting close. I'm about maybe 4 nautical miles outside of the Jasper airport. Cruising over some of the lake, river, whatever you want to call it here. It's basically a big wide branching river, runs through the mountains. The highway is off to my left. As you can tell, I'm already done most of my descent. Still a little sketchy on my landing, so play it a little safe. Try and get close to the ground so I don't have as much elevation to lose at the last minute. But yeah, I've noticed some glitchy textures going through the mountains, more so than on the prairies. I think some of the topography is challenging through the mountains here and for the AI to handle. I don't want to speculate, I guess, too much. It's just, I think, with the rolling landscape and the water, and yeah, it kind of creates for a challenging landscape for the engine to render. But you know what? I flew through this area on Microsoft Flight Simulator 10 maybe a week ago, and this is so different, so amazing compared to that. I mean, those look like the real mountains. I mean, some of the satellite imagery I've flown over is still got a little bit of a winter theme to it, and right now obviously summer. But yeah, this is something to behold. And I'll be driving down that highway in, yeah, about a day. Hopefully not through a puddle like those cars over there. So as you can see, we're coming up on our final approach here. This is a grass landing strip, if I remember correctly. Not much to land on here, other than just some basic flat surface. I'll lower my speed as soon as I clear the trees here. And I think that's it. We're, yeah, the first leg of the trip is basically done. Provided I don't crash. Keep that nose up. There you go. We are in Jasper. First leg complete. See you next time. Thanks for watching.